Oh. Hey y'all, and welcome back to Joey's Booked. Today we are going to be talking about all of the books that I read in December. It's been a little bit since I've been able to sit down and do a wrap-up with you guys. I just haven't had a lot of luck regularly having access to a camera and stuff like that since mine messed up. But I do have one at least for a little bit, so we are going to go ahead and be doing some end-of-the-year content. Today though, I really wanted to sit down, last video about just my monthly readings and things, and start with a December wrap-up. So I'm going to be doing what I always do, where I start from my least favorites of the month, and then we move on over into some of my 5 stars favorites. I think I read around 14th books in the month of December, so it's been quite a pretty busy reading month for me. We've had some library books, we've had some new favorites that hit at the very end of the month. We had one of my worst books of the year. So it's been a very, very all over the place kind of reading month. But with all of that said, let's go ahead and get started and start with our 1-star books. So fortunately, there were no just regular 1-star books this month, but I did have one book that's about a 1.5, and to no surprise to anyone, it's going to be Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh. And yet again, another Ottessa Moshfegh, another book that I just really did not like. I had no clue what this one was really about, but I knew there was a movie adaptation. And I had already had a copy of it, so I figured I'd go ahead and let's pick it up. This seems kind of wintry. It was originally going to be in a scrapped reading vlog I was going to do, reading books set around Christmas or wintry, that kind of thing. And it would have been better off just not reading it. I will say I liked it more than my year of Rest and Relaxation, which is probably one of the worst books I have ever read. But in this we are following Eileen, and we are just in Eileen's head. And Eileen, she lives at home with her dad, who is like an alcoholic. And she's just kind of like a secretary in a children's prison. And we're just kind of in her head. And then it says on the back, it talks about this new lady that comes in, Rebecca. Rebecca doesn't come in for at least half of the book. We're just kind of figuring out, just some weird stuff starts happening. Eileen gets this kind of obsession kind of thing going on. I did not need to be in this character's head in the way that I was. Yet again, Ottessa Moshfegh is doing someone who is purposely unlikable. We're not supposed to enjoy necessarily being in her head. But the amount of times that she talked about her crevices and folds, or her nether regions, or someone else's nether regions, I could not stand it. I don't know if this was supposed to be some kind of weird Annie Wilkes kind of character with just the weird language, because it kind of made me think of Misery and all of Annie Wilkes' Cockadoodie and strange words like that, which I haven't actually read yet. I'm actually reading that next month, the beginning of the year. Regardless, it wasn't good. And I would not recommend this out to anyone. I don't even know if I'm going to still check out the movie or not. And then going into the 2-star range, I didn't have any straight 2 stars this month either. At this point, I feel like I almost should have just maybe not used half stars this month, because, or at least on some of these lower ones, but it just, I don't know, it felt right. So the first of my 2.5 stars that I read this month was another one of my winter books that I was hoping for in that scrap vlog, and that's going to be The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. When this first came out, this was everywhere, and people were loving it, and I don't know why. The first half of this was so drawn out and boring. We're following Alex, and Alex has basically gotten this opportunity to go on this writing retreat where her and about 4 or 5 other authors are basically locked in this cabin in the woods with their favorite author, best time selling author, and they're basically told, over the course of this, you are going to write an entire book and publish it. Not only is Alex there with these other authors, one of these other authors is her like ex-best friend, lover, something. I don't even remember what they were to each other, honestly. And there was just a lot of drama with that. And then things start to take kind of a weird turn from there, outside of like the relationship stuff too. And it's a very suspend your disbelief kind of thriller. It was more family drama type stuff for the first half of it, and it was just felt so slow paced to me. I had such a hard time caring for these characters. And it got better once things started to happen, even though, you know, it was kind of out there, whatever. And then the ending happened, and I don't know, I don't know where I thought it was gonna go, but I wasn't for it. And then it just kept going. It felt like it took forever to finally just reach the end of the book, and it just felt too long to me. It was okay. I'm happy I read it, because now I don't have a FOMO about it, since I've been waiting for the winter to read this for over a year now. I got this back when it was like a book of the month pick in February of 23. So like I've had this for like almost 2 years now. I'm happy it's off my shelf. I don't think it's worth the hype. Other audiobook I read on the way back, and that's gonna be Sour Candy, which I also don't remember the author name of because it was an audio only. Sour Candy was real short horror novella, short story almost, about this guy, and he's at the grocery store or whatever picking up candy for him and like his lover, girlfriend, whoever, and there's this creepy kid shows up with his like this old lady who is not looking good and is having like a temper tantrum, but he's like dressed in like this like old-timey suit kind of thing, and the guy's like, oh, this is weird, but he's the only one that even like offers to help while like they're getting like ushered out of the store. And then on the way home, there's like the stuff that goes down, and basically this kid somehow has gotten attached to him, and he's like, this isn't my kid. What do you mean you're my kid? And he's like, no, you're my daddy. All of this weird stuff. And it just kind of goes from there. And like the candy and stuff, since I met in the candy aisle, is kind of like a theme or device, whatever, throughout. I didn't like where it went with the story. I think what it did in the first part of the story could have worked, and what it did in the second half of the story could have been a thing. I didn't like the combination of the two. But yeah, I just didn't like where it went. The combination didn't work. 2.5 stars. Alright, now we are going to be moving into our 3-star category. Starting us out, unfortunately don't have, because it was a book I read on audio when I went to go visit my family over the holidays, and that would be The Bell Chime. Cannot think of the author's name off the top, but hopefully editing Tabitha will be able to put a little picture up here or something. But in The Bell Chime, this is one I'd heard for a while. It's a short horror novella. I'd heard kind of mixed things on it, and we are basically following this character, and they wake up one morning with their husband, whatever, and they have to go to the store to get some milk or something like that, and then on the side of the carton they see this missing persons poster. Either a poster or on the carton of the milk or something, I don't remember. But they basically see this missing person sign that is their face. They're like, what the crap is going on? So then they take it, and then it kind of starts to explore from there. I don't like the way that it was told, necessarily. I think that I liked what this story did, but it took a non-linear format to a degree, or there's even some other stories we're getting throughout, that I didn't like the order it was presented. There's a degree of it that being non-linear could have worked, but I don't feel like it ever fully connected each story in the way that it was intended by the end, and I just didn't feel the payoff was completely worth it. It did take some turns and stuff that were pretty straightforward to me. Is going to be probably one of the books that has been on my TBR the longest. Almost 2 years I've had this book saying, I'm gonna read it next. And then I just continued not to. So normally with a book that I put off, it's either like a 4.5 to 5 star, or it's just horrible for me. And I was very neutral on this one. It was very just kind of middle of the road, 3 stars. Um, we are following Peyote, who is like this demon in hell, and he is like, his job is to sign people's souls over, basically, and he is scouting out this new family, but he's not really interacting with the family. We're just also getting their story of what's going on, and Peyote kind of has his own kind of story that's going on in the background. That alone kind of just took away from the story. And I think I could have moved past it because eventually storylines collide, all of that kind of stuff as it gets towards the end. But I didn't care that much about Peyote's story. Pei just wasn't as comical, I guess, all of the stuff that I thought this was going to be more of a horror comedy, and I just didn't find it funny. So that didn't work for me. And then Out of the Family, there were bits and pieces of it, but it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, and I thought I didn't like where it was going. But then where it did go, I think I might have liked less. I really thought it was going to be a different kind of story than it was that I wasn't anticipating on, and it just somehow went a worse direction for me. I didn't hate it. It was fine. I would read from Claudia again. Very neutral book for me. It kind of reminds me of when I read Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay, and I didn't have any feelings on it, and that's kind of how I felt on this book. So, kind of a disappointment. Didn't hate it. Is what it is. Also, in our 3-star category, we have another thriller. I've been trying to get myself to pick up more thrillers lately. So this one would be Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. This one was another book of the month. I was really trying to finish my book of the month challenge because I just wanted to say I did it to get a really disappointing reward of a hat. Listen for the Lie. But we are following Lucy, who is basically been like ostracized from her small town and has moved on her life because she's always been suspected for the murder of her best friend when they were younger, whose name was Savvy. And now this podcast guy is coming back to kind of talk about their story on a podcast and even kind of try to solve it. And Lucy, for some reason, decides that means it's a good time to go home. For the first time, basically, since everything's went down. I thought some of the audiobook on it was fun because I like the podcast elements. It's very more almost of a domestic drama, which for me, as I've learned this year, is not a thing. Or not a domestic drama, but like a domestic kind of thriller type thing. Isn't super for me, and it's a lot of, I don't remember what happened. That's also why I'm innocent, amnesia type thing that, I don't know. It didn't fully work for me. I can like an amnesia trope in some thrillers, but it was alright. I don't even know if I could remember where all the drama stuff ended, because I read this at the beginning of the month. It was alright. It might work for some people, because it has been quite popular on the internet, just not for me. So my last 3-star book is like my final holiday book for the month, and one that I was really hoping was going to be redeeming, and it was to a degree, and that was Everyone This Christmas Has a Secret by Benjamin Stevenson. This one was fine. I enjoyed it. Just follows again with the Ernie Cunningham murder mysteries. It's kind of like a Christmas special, and I definitely liked it better than Everyone on This Train as a Suspect because I did not like the sequel. But I also gave Everyone This Family Has Killed Someone earlier in the year. I gave it 4.5, 5 stars, something like that, because I just like the storytelling gimmick. But I think the gimmick is starting to get to the point where it's not saving these because the mysteries themselves I'm losing interest in. This one was more interesting to me than the train one. But basically, it's just another short novella. The Christmassy stuff wasn't super Christmassy. I did really like the kind of the thing he did where there is a advent calendar, and at the end of each chapter basically they like open a door to the advent calendar. Yeah, so like here on number 1, like they give you like a little clue, and it kind of puts the clues together up until the end of the book. It was fun. I read it in like one sitting kind of thing. I'll probably pick up whatever, if there's another full series novel in this, I'll probably use that to kind of judge if I'm going to continue to pick these up, because They're not holding up, and I don't know if the fourth wall kind of gimmick is just going to make it worth continuing on. I do have one more 3-star, because it was a library book that I just took back the other day. Another one of those weird neutral kind of feeling books, and that would have been Graveyard Shift by M.L. Rio. I finally decided to pick up M.L. Rio because I knew it was going to be a short book, and I know If We Are Villains is such a huge thing, but I never knew how I felt about the premise of that book. And in Graveyard Shift, I hadn't heard great reviews, but I heard the writing itself was still good. So I figured, I'm not going to love this, but it will at least give me an idea in short form if it might be writing I want to look back. And after reading it, I think I might actually have that interest now more than I did before. And I think M.L. Rio also has a new full-length novel coming out too, in sometime in 2025. I think it's like Hot Wax or something like that. Is that the right one? Anyways, in Graveyard Shift, we are following a group of people who, like, on their work breaks or whatever, they go and smoke in a graveyard and just hang out, whatever. They're all, like, insomniacs, so it's, like, on the night shift. And one day they're out there and they notice that there is, like, this freshly dug grave, which, okay, cool, it's a graveyard. But the thing is it's like almost like a college campus kind of like historical graveyard. It's not one that's actively in use. So then, of course, they start wanting to investigate, and it kind of goes from there. I don't know. It was, a lot of people are saying in the reviews that it felt like a snippet of a story, which I agree with. Like, it wasn't like in the middle of like an actual novel. I can agree with that. However, I think that if it would have just ended on the mystery that's going on, instead of just kind of telling you the result of the mystery going on and then continuing on for absolutely no reason for 2 or 3 chapters, I think it would have worked, even almost as like a short story. I don't know, it felt very discombobulated in the final ending area, but I did enjoy the writing and the atmosphere a lot. It felt very gothic in a way that sometimes doesn't work for me, but I didn't mind, and overall I gave it 3 stars. It was probably one of my most surprising books of the year, even though it wasn't like a phenomenal book. And then we did have one 3.5 star as well. We had a lot of middle of the road books this month, and that would be Before We Get Kindness by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is the 5th installment in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. Even though I'm liking them less and less, it's not actually for a lot of the reasons a lot of other people are liking them less. They get a little repetitive, and I could tell that he took notes in this one on that kind of feedback, because he didn't repeat the rules as many times unless they were relevant in that particular story. But basically, we are getting a set of 4 short stories in a cafe that basically you can go back in time to a time in your life, but there's a set of rules, and basically you can only go back to where the cafe is, like to someone who has been in the cafe before, and you have to, like, there's a time limit, there's all this other stuff, and you can only be there before your coffee gets cold. When it gets cold, you have to drink it real quick and go back, or else you become a ghost. These are normally like really heartfelt kind of stories that follow different little stories in families and things, or like lovers, whatever, where people are going back to see people usually who have passed. And this just kind of continues on with that. But the issue for me with these is I think he's improved on just not being so repetitive as much. I'm not as invested in the stories anymore. The first book, two-ish books, I really felt the stories that he was trying to tell, and I don't know if I'm becoming desensitized or if they just aren't working for me in the same way. I still gave it 3.5 stars because it wasn't horrible or anything. I still think these are a great winter read, like just something cozy to quickly read, like on my winter breaks and stuff, but not a favorite. And then going into our 4-star section, I have 1 4-star and 2 4.5 stars. So my 4-star this month was The Drawing of the Three, which is the 2nd book in the Dark Tower series, and that's by Stephen King. Completely see now why people say the series gets better after the first book. I read the first book of this almost a year ago. Over a year ago. It would have been November of 23, so I read this one December of 24. I was pleasantly surprised by this book. I just had a hard time with the idea of lobstrosities. I did not have on my 2024 bucket list, or any of my bucket lists, of reading about giant lobsters fighting people. And that's how this book opens up. And that is a spoiler, I'm sorry. But you need to understand that what era of King you were getting into when you pick this up. It's not even just weird dystopian kind of stuff like the first book. If you've never heard of the Dark Tower, basically you are following Roland, who is the last gunslinger, and he is on his quest following the Man in Black. And the first book is, like I said, of kind of almost like short stories that were published independently, and then he kind of combined them together. This kind of continues on from the first book almost immediately after. I think it's no more than a week after the first book. I really liked that it was easy to get back into this world after being away from it so long, and I'm really excited to continue on. I really want to get into these later books because I hear some of the upcoming ones are the best. And this one honestly felt more like the first book in a series. The first one felt almost more like a prequel. So this kind of was really setting up everything that was going on still. So it's not like usual like second book syndrome, but I still really enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting more of Roland and getting the new cast of characters that seem like they're going to be a little more prevalent. And I'm just really excited to get in and see what's really going on with this. For our 4.5, the very last book I read this year would be the fourth installment of Killing Stalking by Kugi. This is kind of the same old continuation I've talked about before on here. It's been a while since I read one. I'm really happy that these are always so easy to pick up, but I wanted something quick just to get another book in. Just as disturbing as always, we're following Yunbum, who is like he kind of becomes like this stalker, and then he breaks into this guy he's stalking's apartment, Sang-woo, and Sang-woo he discovers is like a serial killer and is like keeping someone in his basement, and then it just kind of goes from there, and it's toxic as all get out. It's almost like a toxic relationship type thing, but not really. Like relationship hostage, I don't really know even how to describe it, but I love them. They're really good. I think they were dying down a little bit, especially with all of like the detective stuff going on in the background. But I think this one is probably my favorite one since the first one. But yeah, 4.5 stars. One of my favorites in the series so far. I do plan on finishing out the last half of these, hopefully in 25. Another sequel up. Did not realize how many series I was reading out of this month, but I'm not complaining. I finally got around to reading Somewhere Beyond the Sea by T.J. Klune, and I am so happy I picked this up when I did. I was not having a good time with what I was reading the first half of the month, and it wasn't necessarily that everything was bad, because there were plenty of 3 stars, but I just needed something I cared about, and I loved The House in the Cerulean Sea. I know there are some like problematic things about this series, but I just love the cast of characters, and I couldn't wait to get back. And I really enjoyed this one. I'm not going to give it a full 5 stars. It's still a 4.5, because I thought the beginning of it really drug out, and it got really political, more so. And it hit this weird point in this book where I was like, either stay cozy, or just go all out and not care anymore, and just become like fantasy. Like, let's rebel against whatever we're rebelling against, or like let's do the thing and just go all out. And it just kind of rode the line a lot. So like it's kind of like Bookshops and Bone Dust in the way that it's starting to push the boundaries of what is cozy, but then pull it back in the last minute, because that kind of bugged me in that too. But I love the characters so much that I didn't care in the end. I loved being with the family from the first book. It's basically, if you've not read The House in the Cerulean Sea, it's like a magical orphanage base for kids with powers. So like we have like a fairy, and we have a gnome, a female gnome, and like all the ones in this specific orphanage are meant to be particularly dangerous. And there's a whole thing that happens with it when the social worker goes, and then this just continues on. And then we have our 2 5-stars, but they both hit at the end after Christmas, and I am so happy I picked these up when I did, because neither of these books did I actually think were going to get a 5-star, but for different reasons. My first 5-star, my first one is the more unexpected of the two, and that's because it's Una Out of Order by Margarita Montemore. And this is like a lit fic, magical realism, time travel kind of book. And we are following Una, who on New Year's every year, it's her birthday, and like starting on like her 18th, end of her 18th year basically, whenever she ages, she wakes up at a random year in her life and has to live it out until the next New Year's. So maybe mentally she'll be like 23, but maybe she'll wake up in her like 53-year-old body kind of thing. And then maybe she'll mentally turn 24 and then go back to being like 23 years old. So it's literally her life is out of order and she's trying to navigate it. I loved this so much. I loved following the events in Una's life. I really enjoyed Una herself because she's just trying to figure it out. But the thing I liked the most is how tastefully I felt like this did the time travel component, because it's the focus of it, but it's not the focus. And while in like thrillers and stuff, I don't like the super domestic stuff and like family drama type things, I think it belongs the most in something like lit fic. I like it there. I enjoy it there, and just seeing different times play out, seeing her navigate either relationships with her mom or partners, or early on you meet this character named Kinsey, who is like a younger guy, but he's also like works for her kind of thing, and figuring that out. And I just loved it all. The commentary it has on just living life and not taking for granted the things you have and just making the most out of all the time you can, but also the importance of when things don't go well, or like when you have like a bad year. It's gonna happen, but you learn and you live from it. And I don't know, it felt really fitting to read at New Year's, not only because it has that focus on New Year's, but just as a whole. And like I said with the time travel, it doesn't follow like a full year the whole time. It just talks about the big things that happen sometimes, and that's all you really need to know. Some years are more eventful for others in like everyone's life, so I don't know. I really loved it. I could kind of gush over it more now that I'm talking about it, but it's already a 5-star, and if you need something a little lighter, highly recommend it. Final 5-star book of December, I thought was going to be a DNF for like a good portion of the book, and I was like, no, you gotta know what this is about. And that's gonna be We Used to Live Here by Marcus, is it Kleber? I thought I was gonna DNF it because the beginning of it, the main character, Eve, was obnoxious to me. I didn't like Eve in the beginning of this. I couldn't stand her. She was just making dumb decisions. I pushed through because I wanted to know, okay, what's gonna go on? In this, we're following Eve and her partner Charlie, but are we really following Charlie that much? Not really. Even though everyone talks about how much they love Charlie. Charlie is not in the book enough to matter. Charlie is like gone for like half the book, it feels like. Eve is at home. They have just moved into like this house they're renovating in like the woods, whatever. They're a lesbian couple, and these people show up and knock on the door, and it's like this family of 5. So it's like, you know, mom and dad and their 2 sons and a little girl. And the dad's just like, hey, I'm sorry to bother you. I grew up in this house and I'd love to show my family kind of where I grew up. I hope it's okay. If not, you can completely say no, like it's not a problem. Then it turns into this thing where they just can't get the family to go away at first. But then it starts saying, is it really because the family isn't going away, or is there more things going on than it seems? And this is related to books like House of Leaves, which I have not read still, even though I've been saying probably for about as long as I said I was going to read Sign Here, if not longer, I was going to read next. But it's compared to like an intro to House of Leaves type thing, but it also kind of has some thrillery aspects to it. Once I got into it and realizing what was going on, I was obsessed. But my favorite thing about this isn't even the narrative itself. It is all of the hidden messaging throughout the book. And no one in the reviews, because I don't think they want to spoil it, talk about it. And I'm not going to go like super in detail. I read it and I found one of the hidden messaging things in the book and was like, oh, that's really cool. And that really like invested me in finishing up to figure out if I got it right kind of thing, or if I could figure it out. And then after I finished and I was reading reviews, there were so many other things I didn't catch the first time. And then going back and like there were Reddit threads and everything like dedicated to figuring out what is going on in this book, and like messages and stuff that, like I said, I don't want to spoil. But there's a lot more to this story than it even seems from a narrative perspective, and I could not give it 5 stars even if the plot wasn't my favorite, because of everything else. And it has me that more excited now to pick up House of Leaves, because I know it does a lot of that kind of stuff too, but even to like a more unconventional level. I do highly recommend this, but I'd say go into it when you have the mental capacity to really analyze what you're reading. And with that, that is all of the books that I have read in December of 2024, finishing out the year. Hopefully, if you've made it this far, you enjoyed hearing me ramble about all of these different books that I've read. Hopefully, you come back as I start getting some more videos and things out going into the new year. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Down below, instead of leaving an emoji this time, let me know what was your favorite book of 2024. Or what was your favorite of December, whether it was a Christmas book, whether it was something completely different than the ones I've talked about. Let me know down below. Hopefully you are having a good one wherever you are and whatever time it is, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye.